Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a podcast dedicated to helping owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here that we talk about the things that you need to consider as you're working on your company, from training staff, finding those individuals that you need to be working with to provide quality services, onboarding clients, marketing, selling, and so much more. It's here that we have the experts come on each and every week and share with us their insights as to what it is we can be doing to become better leaders. And today's going to be an excellent episode. We've got on the show Brenden Kumarasamy. How did I do, Brenden?
Close.
Well, then we're going to say it's Brenden for Master Talk. Brenden has a degree in accounting and worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers and founded Master Talk. He coaches ambitious executives and entrepreneurs to become the top 1% communicators in their industry. He also has a popular YouTube channel called Master Talk, which is where he offers free access to communication tools that everyone in the world can use. So, Brenden, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Roger. Thanks for having me.
It is an honor. So just a little tidbit of information. You got your degree in accounting and now specialize in communication. I got my degree in communications and now obviously am the president of an accounting school. So flip-flop there.
That's interesting for sure.
There you go. So that's kind of fun. So here's what I'd like to do. I want to go from your background in accounting and what got you started there and how it transitioned into the communicator.
Yeah, absolutely. The story actually begins, Roger, when I was 12 years old and a career counselor came into my high school, I guess elementary school in this case, and said, hey, you need to figure out your future. So I looked at my report card and I noticed I was really bad at every single subject in school except two. One was gym. Well, gym you can't do much with. And the second one was math. I was probably top 5 in the class in mathematics.
Okay.
So then when I was 12 years old, I went to school. I went home and I looked up on Wikipedia math-related careers. And it was either this or actuarial science. And then I looked up what the job description was for an actuary. And I said, well, I really don't want to calculate the statistics of people dying. So I chose to be an accountant with zero knowledge of what it was. And I never changed my mind until I was 21 years old. So that's what made me pursue a degree in accounting.
Okay, so you get your degree. Why change your mind at 21?
Yeah, so two things happened. One, I realized that there was other job opportunities that related to math, but that were more interesting. So when I was in college, to me anyways, so when I was in college, Roger, my dream was actually to work for one of the big 4 accounting firms, right? Price, Deloitte, KPMG, and EY. So I would go to every single accounting society event, I would have coffees with partners of accounting firms when I was 19 years old. I'd cold email them. And I was very fortunate in my career. I landed Price very young. Probably my first year, I got a summer internship there. But then after that, to get that job, I also did these things called case competitions, Roger. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing rugby or baseball, I was doing presentations competitively. And I found out about a new career opportunity that I didn't know existed, which was management consulting, working at McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, IBM. And I said, wow, I get to do case competitions for a living, but it's super competitive. So I got my full-time offer at Price. I worked there for 18 months and I hustled to get a job at IBM. And luckily I landed a consulting gig. So that led to the switch, and then communication came a little bit after.
Beautiful. So when someone says you are a communicator, tell me what that means. How do you define what it is you do?
Absolutely. So the long story short here, Roger, was when I was in college, obviously today a lot of the people I coach are executives and C-suite level execs, but when I started, it was people who were competing in these case competitions weren't presenting very well in front of execs. So a lot of these competitions, you're presenting in front of the VPs of a bank, and you're presenting your solution, and whoever has the best solution wins. So I started coaching them, and then I realized that no one was sharing this information on the internet. How do you get rid of ums and ahs? How do you open up your eyes when you communicate? How do you speak succinctly in a meeting so that you get your point across really quickly? And no one was sharing the practical side. A lot of communication information in the world is very it's very vague. You can't really take it and run with it like you would with the tax code. Like, this is the black and white binary rule set on how you apply this. And there's obviously nuances in the tax code, but you get the idea. So primarily what we coach people on today is really how to be exceptional presenters in the boardroom, getting rid of ums and ahs, presenting a board presentation effectively, knowing how to deliver a sales presentation in a way that gets people aligned with your messaging.
I'm loving this. One of the things that I feel the accounting profession lacks is that ability to really communicate effectively what's going on with the numbers. And when it relates to small businesses, there's really not like a boardroom opportunity where we're presenting the accounting information. So you've got to figure out, okay, here's my client. I've got the financials. How do I provide a situation in which they're going to listen to what I have to share as insights? And so it's giving the voice to the accounting profession to literally be able to communicate this information so that they have useful information in the hands of the business owners to help them make their decisions. So here's where I want to go with this. Accounting professionals, they're clearly in a position where they have information. What advice would you have as it relates to their ability to actually communicate these numbers in useful bits of information?
Absolutely, Roger. So there's different types of advice we can cover today. I'm sure we'll have time to cover both. One is industry specific insights that we'll touch upon right now. And the second is just general tips that anyone within an accounting firm can just implement.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is if you're listening to this tip, A, implement it yourself, but also see how can I get my team to do this too? That's really where we get the ROI for today's time.
Yeah.
So the first piece is the question you asked. How do we communicate numbers more effectively? Let's use the SMB example because only mostly, as we both know, there's not a lot of IFRS services in the context of smaller accounting firms. Those are mostly publicly traded businesses. So most of our client bases in small to medium sized firms will really be private companies. You'll be operating on ASPE. A lot of them won't really have a lot of knowledge in accounting. So the example I like to give my accounting execs is, let's say Joe has a bakery and Joe wants to keep growing that bakery. So as an accountant, sure, there's different numbers that you really want to touch upon, but you have to take a step back and ask yourself, out of all the numbers that I have in my and all the data set, what are the ones that Joe cares about first? And that's what you front load back to the client. Whereas what a lot of accountants do, since they're really technical, is they'll go through everything. Okay, Joe, these are all the 15 items that we reported on this year. This, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And by the time you get to F, Joe is passed out and he's not really listening and he doesn't really care anymore.
Yep.
Instead, the frame that you want to present is Joe, out of all, you're still going to present all 15 in some way, shape, or form. But you start that presentation by going, Joe, you started this bakery to achieve X. Joe goes, Roger really understands me. He's right. I did start this bakery. He's a great listener. I don't want to switch accountants. So you keep the business. That's one. And two, you go, Joe, for all of the other bakeries that we're working with, I really want to hear what he's doing with other bakeries. These are the three numbers we focus the most time on, and here's why. And I'm just making something up here. Obviously, I don't know the bakery business that well, but one of them could be inventory turnover. How quickly are we moving through the inventory because the shelf life of these goods are not low, high, etc. And then the third piece to that is then tying the number back to the specific activity that this business owner is using to calculate or optimize their operations. And for everyone, it's going to be different, but that's the framework I would follow here.
I'm loving this because one of the things that I think is very important is this is very practical. You've got a client that you have a lot of information, lots of things that I think as accounting professionals we want to draw attention to. We want to show this is what we're tracking, this is what we found. But to your point, it's those three things that are the KPIs we need to draw attention to. But here's what I would add to what you shared. It's the therefore what clause. It's, okay, you've now helped me as the baker understand how these numbers have evolved over time, and you're helping me see the relevance of why I should be watching them. Now I see the number. I see where it's going. What's the trajectory and what should I be doing about it? Should I double down? Should I be working harder? Should I get in front of it and curb it? What am I doing here about this? Because you're giving me great information, but I want to know therefore what. And I think there's two folds to this. As accounting professionals, we're clearly not wanting to tell the client what to do. We want this to be their idea. It is their business. So we need to kind of solicit from them, okay, here's this information. Here's what's happening. What does that make you think needs to take place next? What do you feel is the thing on your mind that needs attention most today? And through questions, we're able to bring now actionable items to the table, because these, again, aren't our things to resolve. We're not the client. We're not the one making the decisions that have, ramifications that we have to deal with. The client does. And so we need to provide the information and then not just stop, but ask therefore what type questions. Would you add anything more to that?
I love the way that you phrased that, Roger. Nothing to add there. I think that's a great strategy, and I love that you added that extra angle. You're totally right. the client needs to understand what's in it for me, right? We
Mm-hmm.
call it WIIFM radio, right? What's in it for
With
me?
them. Yep.
And right. And if for me rather, but if you're really clear on what that value proposition is, you're already going to be ahead of most accountants because most people honestly don't really do this in our business from my experience. So if you're really taking that time, you'll really keep your clients for life.
I couldn't agree more because you're right. The accounting profession is notorious for providing the financial reports in perhaps just an email form and not saying anything about it other than I've done the work, it's accurate, it's complete, here it is, what you do with it is your choice, and they're moving on to the next client. I did my
Exactly.
job. And that's just sad because we have so much to offer from the accounting profession to the business community, and we're just not providing it. So very well said. Here's what I'd like to do then is I want to now talk for a quick moment about public speaking and communication skills. And this is kind of going back to my younger years and my degree, but the point is so much of our communication today is verbal. We interact at a verbal level, but so many younger people today would dare say we communicate via text and email. There's a lot of people that feel the written word is so much more valuable, but fail to actually understand how best to communicate. You were speaking earlier of the ums and ahs, developing those skills to be articulate, to be succinct, to be basically compelling. These are skills that someone can develop over time. We need it to motivate our employees to be clear as to what's expected of them. We need to do it with our clients to manage expectations. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here as it relates to the written word versus the verbal. How would you actually, with your clients, help them master both and understand the need to have a skill for each?
Absolutely, Roger. To be frank, I'm a lot more talented at verbal than written, but what I'd say as a general rule of thumb is most of the times you're better at one versus the other. So let me
Mm-hmm.
use an example. Let's say we take an accountant, which is going to be more typical for this industry specifically, is you're going to be a lot better at written than you are at verbal. So the advice then becomes take what's coming verbally, written rather, that you're writing, and take out your phone for the stuff that's not proprietary, obviously, and just practice saying those things out loud on a voice recorder. That really helps you communicate more succinctly and verbalize your thoughts better. If you're better at verbal than written, then what you want to do is as you're verbalizing your thoughts out loud, you record that and then you write them out in an email, you write them out in a different Word document, and that helps you get your thoughts together. That's a generalized principle between both. But then the next step becomes what's one easy thing? Because the challenge, Roger, to your point, is communication is hard to teach because it's like juggling 18 balls at the same time. One of those balls is ums and ahs, one of them is smiling, one of them is eye contacts, one of them facial expressions. And it gets really confusing. So what I always think about is what are the three easiest balls to juggle? And I'll give one as an example, but I'm happy to share the others, which is the random word exercise, which scares the heebie bejeebies out of accountants. Take a word, right? Completely unstructured. Take a word like pen, and you create a 60-second presentation out of thin air on the spot. And what this does is it really helps you with small talk and it allows you to communicate ideas that you are not an expert in. So when you go back to your expertise, it's going to be very easy for you to articulate your ideas.
I like that. That's very good. Okay, keep going with the other principles because this is just number one.
Absolutely, Roger. So back to RQV. So R was the random word. Let's go to Q now. Q is the question drill. Roger, as you know, we get asked questions all the time in the accounting business, whether it's from our clients, whether we're on a podcast, whether we're being asked questions on a sales call. How are you different from other firms? What is your thought process and how you deliver the client's results? How can this help me as a bakery? How do you answer all of these questions? And I'll tell you a funny story around this. A couple of years ago, when I was just getting started, I've been coaching for 8 years now, but I started guesting on podcasts probably 4 or 5 years ago. So the first podcast, I wasn't as good as I am right now. Hopefully, I'm doing okay. But I remember the first time some guy asked me, Roger, "Hey Brenden, where does the fear of communication come from?" And I looked at the guy and I was like, "I don't know, man. Las Vegas, Florida, you tell me." And I never wanted to be in that situation ever again. So what did I do, Roger? Every single day for 5 minutes, I answered one question that I thought the world would ask me about my expertise. So day one is, hey, what's your tips for introverts? Number 2 is what's your vision for Master Talk? Number 3 is, okay, for the accounting business, Brenden, how do you use your tips and apply this directly into a firm? But if you do that once a day for a year, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry, and you'll be bulletproof. So that's the question drill. That's Q.
I like the question drill. One of the things that's encouraging about that is it's causing you to kind of be on your toes, be ready for that random question that you don't anticipate. And I would dare say, if you're not able to kind of take in a question that you weren't expecting and process it, that's, I think, one of the challenges we all are going to experience. So great exercise. The thing I would add is don't be afraid to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, great question. This is something I need to get back to you on. This is something that I need to research. This is something that I'd be happy to get back to you with. So I do feel that the fear you brought up earlier comes from being put in a position where you're thought to have the answers and you don't. Because they're going to catch you, right? It's imposter syndrome. It's the idea of, oh, somebody has now outed you. You don't know exactly what I thought you should. That's not true. That isn't true. So yeah, very good thing. Okay, let's go to number 3.
And just building on your point, because you made a really good one, especially around I don't know, Roger, is the way that I teach this is there's a big difference. I want people to listen to this closely. There's a big difference between, Roger, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And that's a great point, Roger. I'm not sure. Let me ask the team and get back to you. So we're still saying I don't know, but the frame and how we're communicating I don't know tells a different story. Mm-hmm. So the first person, did this person just get their CPA? Are they even qualified to do this job? I'm not really sure. You kind of start to doubt their credibility. But the second person has no idea what the answer is, but they're conveying the thought in a way that makes you go, yeah, but they'll probably figure it out.
Yeah, because there's a sense of confidence with that. The fact that they were able to say, great question, I'm going to get to my team and get back to you. There's a sense of confidence that's coming from the fact that they have a means to getting the answer, where the other one was just kind of like, you caught me. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I'm loving this. This is a great example.
Absolutely. And this happens every day in accounting because we know how much nuance there is in audit and tax because the policies change all the time. The industries change all the time. The way that the laws change all the time. So it's really difficult for you to know 100% of anything. So you're saying, I don't know all the time.
But I have access to the information. I can get the answer.
Exactly.
There you go.
And it's conveying that confidence, which brings us to number 3. It's funny. I use this analogy as a joke with the accounting industry because I know no one will do this. But here's the point I will make. If you do what I'm about to coach you on, you'll be the only person in America doing it. And I guarantee you, I know this is a bold statement I'm making, Roger, I'm going to guarantee at some point it will generate you more revenue. Here's the game. The V is called video messages. Video messages. And I teach a very specific niche of video messages to clients that I coined called the BVM, the birthday video message. So here's what I do. So with my 100 or so clients, I have a Google Calendar. It's actually on my second screen right now as we're having this conversation. And it tells me whose birthday it is today. Could be a business partner, could be a big account of mine, it could be a family member. And on their birthday, I kid you not, Roger, I don't overthink this. I put a birthday hat on that I bought for $10 on Amazon. It's actually sitting right there on my couch. I open my camera and I just go, guess whose birthday it is today? And I wish them happy birthday. And I'm the only person in their life that sends them a birthday video message. And the amount of business, love, and recognition I've gotten from this very simplistic strategy is astounding. And the reason I use the accounting field as an example is I know from experience that most 95% of the people listening to me right now are going, I would never do that in a million years. And that's why you will not get the business as the one person who's listening to this right now and going, you know what, this Brenden guy's in Roger sounded a little crazy today. I know why Roger brought this guy Brenden on the show, but I'm going to do that and see what happens, and it'll change your life. I guarantee you that.
You know, I love this, and I'm going to add to it. So one of the things that I would do, and the idea of the video, by the way, it can one-up what I'm currently doing. So similar to you, in LinkedIn, you have what's called celebrations. In celebrations, you can see whose birthdays it is, whose work anniversaries they are, who got a new job, right? So in there, my wife sitting next to me, she'll be actually watching television or whatever, playing Candy Crush. I'm in LinkedIn going into the celebrations, and I'm going to every individual that's had a birthday, and I'm wishing them a happy birthday. I'm going to everyone that's gotten a work anniversary and congratulating them on another year worked. For those that have new jobs, I'm congratulating them on a new position. What I need to do is up my game, and like you were mentioning, is put in the video. The video's right there. There's a button that literally allows me to put the video in and clearly simply say, hey, happy birthday. So I'm going to take what you're saying and maybe up my game, particularly for certain individuals. So this is awesome. I love the challenge. I'm up for it.
And you know what's funny, Roger, as you communicate this, I'm just talking right now for the sake of it, is I've been saying this for 5 years. There's going to be one accountant in America who will do this, and I think I just found that person who will be setting that example for the industry.
This is
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is a lot of fun. So here's where I want to go now. Master Talk. Clearly you made the transition. Tell us, why do these C-suite people, these individuals like you and I, who are very, very successful, how do they struggle to communicate? And by the way, I know exactly what you're referring to, because these people are extremely good at what they do, but it doesn't mean they're great presenting or speaking. So tell us about some of that.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Roger. So why does the C-suite struggle? This actually surprised me a lot too, because when I started in the business, I thought most of the people I was going to be working with were early level managers. And some of them are managers, but most of them by far and large are VPs and above. Why is that? Couple of reasons. The first one is the easy one, which is refinement. So even if a vice president, actually, VP is probably not the right word here, since let's talk accounting firm nomenclature. So let's say you're 2 levels under the partner at a big four accounting firm. So like you're senior manager, you're doing a lot, you've been at the firm for 7, 8 years. You're doing really well. Like you're communicating well, you're managing different audit teams. If you're an audit, you're managing different taxation teams. You're an expert in your field. But you're not getting the sales targets that you need to make partner at the firm. So for that gap, you're still amazing. You're just not exceptionally perfect. And the partner process, which is different for every firm, if you're in a bigger firm where you have to go fly out somewhere, you have to present a business case on why you should be promoted. And you're up against the most talented accounting executives in the whole world, right? So when you're, or at least against your market. So for that type of person, really investing and leveling up their communication is both a financial benefit for them and also an important one to get them to the next level of their communication. So that means you communicate well in client meetings, but are you communicating well in sales meetings? Are you communicating well when you're talking about the future state of your industry? When a client invites you to a 300-person event and wants you to speak in front of their whole team, how are you representing the firm and the brand of the firm? That's one example. The second example is the technical executive, which is very apparent in this podcast. So a lot of the STEM executives across the technical fields, they don't really get promoted based on their communication skills at the beginning. And you know this, Roger, right? They get promoted because they're very strong. So let's take the typical tax executive. You could get away getting your next promotion or getting your next job if you're really talented. Because there's some people in a very specific, like say we take you're a tax expert in the agricultural space. There's not a lot of names, right? We can count on a couple of hands how many people are in that space for a specific demographic. So those people have such a niche expertise that business just comes their way, but they're horrifying at communication. So if they want to get their game to the next level, they have to master speaking. And then the third example is communication might not be necessarily for them. It's about setting the example for the culture of the team that they're managing. Because if they're not 10s out of 10s in comms, everyone else is going to be a 7. So if they're an 8, everyone else is going to be a 5. So those are the 3 main reasons that come to mind right now.
You know, this really resonates because I know of people in these situations. These are things that people are experiencing in real life scenarios. So let's break it down to the types of communication. First of all, you've got the one-on-one where you're interacting with an individual. You're perhaps working with a peer or a subordinate, and you're needing to actually communicate some information. Maybe you're working with a superior. What can we say about that level of communication, one-on-one, that you could perhaps advise and help us with that will allow us to better communicate?
Absolutely, Roger. So the way that I explain this, going back to practice, I'm glad this is resonating with you. It's like this is really practical. Is to going to one-on-one, the rule set of how you communicate will change based on the communication setting that you're in. Example, we're having a one-on-one conversation right now through a podcast. So the rule set is very different, which is, hey, you shouldn't interrupt people while they're speaking most of the time, or else it ruins the show for the audience. You should be succinct with your questions. Like, notice how I paused in between three of the tips. I actually used to ramble the whole three before. And then after that, I was like, wait a second, I'm going for 15 minutes and the host isn't jumping in here. So I change it now where I just pause. So now you're going, oh, this is my time to jump in. So that's a rule set, which doesn't really apply to the people listening, because a lot of people listening won't do a podcast. So let's go to the second scenario. The second scenario, which we can talk about now, is the feedback call. How do you give feedback to your staff in a way that's inspiring, not just information? So most account execs, what they'll do is accounting execs, they'll go into a meeting, they'll say, hey, look, you made these 7 mistakes in the tax in the tax that you're delivering for the client, in the report that you're doing, your finances here, they're off. You didn't calculate this correctly. You should have reviewed your spreadsheet ahead of time, right? So they just throw a bunch of feedback. So it's really defeating for the student, for the person in the company, I mean, versus implementing something like WORDS, which is a framework I teach, which stands for write, organize, rank, deliver, and smile. Let me repeat that again. Write, learn to write really good feedback for the people you're giving feedback to, organize it in a way that's simple and easy to understand, rank it. This is where it gets interesting. Rank the feedback from easy to implement to hard. So what you want to do, especially if it's a casual feedback call, is you go to your student, you go to your employee, you give them easy stuff to work on, it builds up their confidence, then you give them the harder stuff. That's R. D is deliver. Watch the energy of the person you're speaking to. They're more introverted, change your tone. Like, you have a more of a lower tone in your voice, Roger. So you'll notice I'm using and I'm matching your tone. Whereas sometimes on podcasts, I actually sound like this, which won't work with an accounting audience. And S is don't forget to smile. A lot of people, when they deliver feedback, they look like the Grinch who stole Christmas. Don't be that person. And that's words.
Great. I love this. An acronym is always good to use, and my listeners, I'm sure, stopped, paused, and maybe even wrote that down. So here's the other thing that I wanted to do then. Here we are interacting with our peers. It's the client, the business owner. We're talking to them. We're conveying information. What insights would you have as to how to better communicate the financials as we're delivering it to the client for them to now take and use for the coming month?
Absolutely, Roger. I mean, that's such a great segue, because it's true. A lot of us want to master talking, but we're forgetting the other lens. But here's the thing that's always bothered me around listening, Roger. It's hard to coach. A lot of us, we want to get better at listening. We want to improve, but we're not really sure what to do. Like, do I talk to my parents more? Do I have more conversations with my staff? So luckily, you're catching me at a good time period of history. I have a solution, which is, I call this the goals call. So the goals call works something like this. Pick somebody you love. You don't have to start with clients where it's high risk. Just with your kids, just with family, because communication, I know we're focusing a lot on the professional lens here today, but it's really your whole life. It's the way you talk to your family. It's the way that you talk to the cashier at a grocery store. And it's that piece too. So pick a best friend of yours from that you went to college with and sit them down for 45 minutes. It's a 45-minute call. And the first 5 minutes goes something like this. So let's say I was doing this with you, Roger. Just, you don't have to do this with me, but I'm just using it as an example. Is Roger, we were buddies from college, I just want to hear what your goals are this year. So take 5 minutes and just write out your top 3 goals. So then what you do is you take 5 minutes, you write out those 3 goals that you have in your life and why those goals are important to you. Then after you're done, you state them. So you go, Brenden, this is goal 1. This is why it's important to me. Goal 2, this is why it's important to me. Goal 3, this is why it's important to me. And then you follow up with a restate. So restate just means, just to make sure, Roger, I heard you correctly. You said goal 1 was, you don't have to make it as professional as I'm making it now. You can make it a lot more informal, obviously. Just to make sure I got this is your goal, this is why it's important, et cetera, et cetera. And then usually when I stop, the person adds more. Actually, Brenden, I forgot this, A, B, C, D. You start taking others. Then you restate again until they have nothing left to say. And then for the remainder of the 40 minutes, you're only allowed to restate and ask them more questions. So if they said something like, Brenden, Roger, my goal is to do $1.3 million in gross revenue, a question could be, great, how much do you want to take home personally? That could be an example of a question, because I know you want to do that on a gross revenue, then you go into net sales, things like that. You just start asking more questions and restating. And the last part, you are not allowed to give any advice for the whole call. If you do this with 10 people, Roger, your listening skills will exponentially improve. And that's the goals call.
I absolutely love that. I teach a similar thing as it's related to sales, and it's validate and confirm, or clarify. When you have this conversation, as you're explaining, one of the natural things that I think everyone kind of falls into is as one person is speaking, you're considering what your response is going to be. So you're waiting for that pause. You're anticipating the pause. And as they pause, you jump in with that comment that you have that you've articulated in your mind, not clearly listening to the person. They said something a moment ago that triggered this thought. You've been now compiling your comment, not hearing what they're still saying, and then they pause, boom, you're into the next thing. Where listening is so much more valuable, where I can now just pay attention, see what you're saying, and rather than coming up with my response, I'm intently listening with the opportunity to then say, wow, I found that very intriguing. Can you elaborate? Can you share with me a little bit more? Why is that so important to you? And so I'm acknowledging, and then I'm through that validating and clarifying. And so I'm going to do just like you have done. I'm going to probe a little deeper. I'm going to get them to now answer a few more clarifying questions about what it is. And it's interesting because now I've reserved this thought, which is talk, say something, you've got to contribute, to rather, I want to understand. And it's that Coveyism of seek first to understand. I want to actually be in that position where I'm now learning more about you. And it's fascinating because at the end of the day, I've been in numerous conversations where I've learned tons about the individual, and I can walk away from the conversation and they don't know anything about me. Yet they, in that conversation, feel listened to, they feel heard, they feel validated. These are things that in many cases, they don't feel in their interactions with other people. They don't feel heard. They don't feel validated. So how valuable is this when we're talking to our clients and to our business clients? They're feeling heard and validated. My accounting professionals, the ones I know, they don't ask these questions. They don't care. They're just taking the numbers, running with it, and coming back with a report. You actually are curious about my business. You want to know why I started it, what I'm trying to do, why I'm trying to be different from the competition. And you're asking these questions, and clearly the client, like any other person, they're going to get excited about what they're talking about because it's them. It's something that's interesting to themselves, and they're happy to share. What do you think of all that?
I love it's funny, we're speaking the exact same language today, Roger. And the reason why this works so well is because human beings value scarcity. Human beings value scarcity. Something they get a lot of, they tend to value less than something they get not a lot of, right? They get very rarely. So we mentioned a couple of those examples today. One of them is the birthday video message. Why is it so effective? It's because we're the only ones sending it. If everyone was sending a birthday video message, it wouldn't be as effective anymore. And it's the same example you just drove home with why does the client get excited about talking about their baby, talking about their business, because they're not getting asked those questions by anyone else in their life. And where you really want to be your sweet spot, this is the way whenever I'm coaching people on building their service-based businesses, is you're in a sweet spot with their client when they see you as their strategic advisor. When you shift the conversation from I'm just doing numbers on a spreadsheet to I am the strategic advisor for this company, as long as they stay in business, my friend, you'll always have their business. Okay. As long as they stay in business, you'll always be their business. And that's the frame I take with, even if I coach them on communication, I see myself as clients as strategic advisor. It's not just about saying, oh, you want to get rid of your ums and ahs? Sure, let's get rid of your ums and ahs. Why do you want to get rid of your ums and ahs? Why is it important to you? What are you trying to accomplish? So if they're saying like, oh, I just got appointed to CFO of this business and I need to crush this presentation so I don't get fired in the first quarter. Okay. So now what we're coaching on has a purpose that I'm aware of, except this is very easy. Most people in the coaching business, the education space, they obviously do this. But in the accounting business, my God, nobody does this. So if you take that extra step to really have these conversations and you really treat clients like family, and for those of you who are skeptical of this or who are saying, oh my God, it's busy season, I'm working my tail off. I don't know what this episode's going to come. We're recording this in February with a bunch of physical dates coming up. So you're probably panicking. So for you, the easy example is don't do this with everybody. That's not what me and Roger are saying right now. Do this with your top 10 accounts. Because there's an 80-20 rule. There's 20% of your clients right now that are driving 80% of your revenue. And the lifetime client of an accounting client is really big because they'll always use accounting services every single year. So focus what Roger and I are teaching you just on that first 10 clients and then expand from there. I think that's the easy implementation here.
It is beautiful. Excellent advice. Regarding the internet, I know a lot of the people listening may have this desire or may have already kind of ventured into trying to online have some video representation. They're trying to communicate. So they may have a blog, they may have a newsletter and so forth. Clearly, they're doing emails, but a lot of us are in a position where we may be encouraged to actually have a video presence. You have a channel, I have a channel. What advice do you have to someone as it relates to creating video for the online use consumptions, whether it's little short reels that are TikTok related, Instagram, or longer explanational videos? What advice do you have in that context?
Absolutely, Roger. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Let's address, to begin with, the number one objection that we both know is on everyone's minds right now. Brenden, Roger, I don't need to post on social media, okay? Like, I've been in my accounting firm for the past 15 years. Do you know where I got my CPA? And I'm doing this, and I have a lot of success in my tax. Why do I need to post on social media? So here's the business case I'll present as to why that is. The goal with most accounting firms, not the big ones, but I would say the mom and pops, the mediums to mid-size, is you really want to win your local market, right? Because if you win your local market, you can meet everyone. You know the tax laws because they'll vary state by state as well in the US, and they'll vary province by province in Canada, is really to win the local market. Because now the next question is, what is the easiest way to win the local market? So word of mouth is something we're already doing, right? Okay, we deliver great work. I actually met my accountant at an event I was judging for, and then he became my CPA. So he wasn't that active on social media. Fair enough. But going back to this, if you're the only accountant, going back to video messages, if you're the only accountant, and God knows you are, if you're the one who's posted on social media, not on every social, I would just focus for this audience, Roger, 90% of it's LinkedIn. I'm telling you right now, it's LinkedIn. You don't need to have a YouTube channel. You could be on Instagram if you want, but really your ideal clients are all on LinkedIn. So if you're just posting once a week with some tips on accounting, sure, there might be other people doing that in the world, but in the local city that you're living in, pretty much nobody. And you'll be famous in that city. And that's what will get you a lot of business in the accounting world. That's the business case. Now the why. What you do. Very simple. Follow a framework called QIT. QIT just means write down all the questions that clients ask you. Then write insights and answers to those questions, and then post your answers in a video. That's it.
I love this. Excellent advice, and I agree. What you're trying to do is be seen. These are two big things. Be seen as the expert. What you're trying to do is differentiate yourself from your competition, and a great way to do that is the medium that you're using, so LinkedIn, video, so forth, but also recognizing that now because of your giving quality information, you're doing one of the big things that exists today, which is sharing. If you can actually give and educate the what's and the whys, you're actually helping the business owners understand what's important for them to be considering as they run their business, but you're holding back on the how. The how happens to be the thing that they're paying for. So if you in your communication can actually do videos where you're educating them through the what's and the whys, they see you as the expert, they're learning from you, they want to get involved with you because clearly you know what you're talking about, but at the end of the day, they have to pay to get the how. So this is beautiful.
And even push it further, especially for accounting, Roger. Even if you communicate the how, they'll still hire you anyways because I have an accounting degree and I don't want to do my own taxes. I don't want to do any of this. I want my CPA. Obviously, I'll review his work because I have some experience in the field just to make sure the deductibles are correct, and I'll ask a more advanced question than the typical client would. But even for me, I don't even want to bother making this. So I can't even imagine somebody who has a bakery, somebody who has no accounting experience. Even if you teach them all the hows, obviously there's some you probably can't teach or allowed to teach, but if you teach most of it, even then they'll still hire you. So yeah, your point is definitely sound on visibility.
All right. So we're going to wrap this up. We've had a wonderful conversation. So I have one last question and then I'm going to tie it up. When you work with executives, what causes them to say, I need a coach like you? What is it in their situation that typically causes them to realize I need to pay for a service like yours? What is that? Any noticeable triggers?
Yeah, for sure, Roger. I would say for me, the most noticeable one is somebody who owns a business. There's two frames in the accounting space. One is they're an accounting firm and they're really feeling like there's some conversations that they're having with prospects that they're just not getting closed. So they're having the conversation, they get called, but somebody else picks them. They pick another firm. So what are they doing in that conversation that's leaking money in their business? That's archetype one. The second archetype is somebody who works specifically in the big eight, right? The big accounting firms, whether it's the big four, the smaller firms like BDO or Baker Tilly, and going into those firms, and their goal is to really make partner. If their goal is to get into those sales targets and improve them, it's at that level that I would really start to recommend hiring a coach because the financial ROI of hiring one is vastly bigger than just paying a few thousand for a coach. So it'd be in those two situations I would focus a coaching conversation on.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Because one of the things that I think really differentiates a lot of leaders is their ability to effectively communicate. So you've got to be inspirational, you've got to be motivational, but you also have to be concise and you have to be convincing, compelling with the information you're providing. So this is all good stuff. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of wrap up what it is we've been discussing, share a few of the summary thoughts that I have. But before I go into that, I'd like to share with our listeners that there happens to be a workshop that Brenden puts on. It's a free workshop that he's offering to our listeners where you can go to the episode description and see what it is that you can do to access this workshop to improve your communication skills. And I invite all my listeners to definitely go take advantage of this. In the episode description, you'll find the information there that you need in order to take advantage of this offer, and I encourage you to do so. In addition, we have a number of free resources that are also available to our listeners that we've actually put in the episode description that I want to invite you to get. First and foremost, there is a book. It's a book called Red to Black in 30 Days. It is a turnkey guide for accounting professionals to help clients with the most pressing issue that many of them face related to cash flow. So if you haven't already received that book, definitely do so. As it relates to your business, also you want to take advantage of the turnkey business plan. If you haven't taken the time to just set aside an hour or so to go over what is that turnkey business plan that exists for accounting firms, this is an opportunity for you to work on your business and take a little bit of time to actually reassess what it is you're doing, what your plans are for the new year. So definitely make sure that you're taking the time to check out the free resources that are available at universalaccounting.com, as well as going to the episode description of this episode here. Now, as it relates to the summary of the call, this has been a wonderful conversation. Brenden's clearly very astute with what he is addressing as it relates to communication. I firmly believe that one's ability to communicate, especially as it relates to clients, speaking to a peer-to-peer business owner, is very important because it is part of the onboarding process. They need to see you as someone that can take care of their needs, and that's what's going to cause them to get that engagement. But it's the client retention component. It's the idea that they see you continually as that one resource they need to have in their business. And your ability to really position yourself as the expert internally and externally is going to help you grow. And I really liked a lot of the insights here. The one thing that was very helpful is this tidbit of the birthday message. That one really resonated, only because I'm halfway there. I am sending out the messages. I just need to up my game and stand out a little bit more from the others that are doing it. Now, as it relates to other types of communication, I do feel that there are those abilities, whether it be on our phone apps or whatever, to rather than just sending a text or whatever, let's send something, a little bit more unique so that we can stand out. One of the things that if you know me, you happen to know that in my text messages, I'm one to send gifts all the time. It's one of those things that I felt was a way of like wearing a bow tie, standing out from the crowd and being special. So if anything, that was one of the takeaways for me from this. He also had that word acronym where he was helping us understand various things that we can be doing to make our communication intentional and deliberate, especially when we're interacting with subordinates and trying to help them understand what it is that they need to be doing to up their game and do it differently or better. The other thing that I wanted to add is the power of listening. I really enjoyed that part of the conversation because I do feel that communication is often seen as proactively dispelling information, when in reality, I think the gem of the whole process is listening better. And if we just listened a little bit better, showed a little bit more curiosity and interest, people will feel validated, interested, or listened to and heard. And if we can help that, it does change the emotional reaction that they're having or interaction that they're having with us. And if we can actually put them on a positive playing field with how they felt that interaction with us was, I think they'll just want to interact with us more and more and more. So lots of great little tidbits here that I really appreciated. So Brenden, thank you for being on the show. Do you have a closing thought for us?
That was amazing. Great summary, Roger. I really loved that. It was great to be on the show. And for me, the big takeaway is simply a question I'll leave the audience with, which is, how would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? I find a lot of the languaging around speaking is really negative. Whereas the approach I take is, let's dream a little. The same way we dream and built our accounting firms and our businesses, do the same with speaking. Take some time and really reflect on that. Because if you do, that's what gives you the motivation to work on all the tips we talked today.
Wonderful. Excellent way to close this conversation. So to my listeners, if you have not yet already subscribed to the podcast, I invite you right now, go ahead and subscribe, set your notifications so you get the dings and bells as to when we release our episodes. They happen to come out each and every week, new episodes from the experts sharing with you various things that you need to be considering as you're working on your business and building, as I say, the premier accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business in your area. As it relates to growing your business, I also want to invite you to GrowCon. If you haven't registered for and made your plans to visit with us, you need to. GrowCon is an annual event. It's a conference for the owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses to come and hear from the experts from the stage. It's here where they're going to share with us the insights that we need to be addressing in the new year, as well as interacting with your peers, those people that are doing exactly like you are, making collaborations, people that can actually assist you as you're working with your clients, learning from those people that are ahead of you as to your trajectory and what it is you can be doing to actually work on your business. And lastly, Universal Accounting, meeting the staff and team here that are committed to working with you so that you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting Center. So all these things, take advantage of those. You can go to universalaccounting.com and find out more what it is you can be doing to work on your business. There you'll find podcast highlights, playlists that you can binge listen to as it relates to topics that matter to you, such as marketing, sales, tech stacks, and so much more. And then lastly, if you would like more information about the things we've discussed today or things that you'd like to actually go over as it relates to your business, feel free to reach out to us here at Universal Accounting. You can go to universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care, be safe, and have a great day.